Welcome back to this list of application areas. We're thinking of aspects of application, and we're thinking about, okay, when we get to that final stage, we've studied and understood the passage, we've not just understood it as a sort of academic exercise or something like that, but we've thought about how it impacts our hearts, our love for God and desire to please Him. And then that desire then spills out into the practical issues of living out God's truth, right? Living out our Christian faith. And so what are the arenas in which we are to live or to apply God's word? And so application arenas, here were the four we covered in the first video. It should think about our values. We should think about our home life, all the relationships connected to that, our use of money, the whole arena of sexuality. Let's just get into some relational arenas, if you like. Workplace. We spend a lot of time at work, potentially 5 days a week, 6 days a week. It depends on your situation. Could be 40, could be 70 hours, who knows? But it's a lot of time. And so our workplace, how do we relate to people in the workplace? How does this passage impact what happens there? As an employee relating to an employer, as an employer relating to my employees, as a co-worker relating to co-workers, all aspects of integrity and holiness and obedience and honoring the Lord with our work. The Bible has a lot to say about the workplace. Then there's the church arena. This isn't in order of importance. Church is very significant, but we're kind of clumping them together here in terms of arenas of relationship, I suppose. Well, actually, there's no real order here other than values being first and foremost, but everything else is equally important in one aspect or another. So our church life, how we relate to those in authority over us, how we relate to one another. There's a whole host of one another's in the New Testament. Love one another, bear with one another, forgive one another, support one another, encourage one another. There's a whole host of instructions. And so as we think about application of God's word, it's very rich to think about, okay, what does this passage mean for my church situation, for my relationships with others, for the ministry involvement, for my use of spiritual gift, for my roles, responsibilities, participation, attitude. There's a whole host of things going on there, of course. And then a broader community. Now that could be the people you live around. It could be interacting with your local authorities. It could be the kind of realm of hobbies and interests, people you spend time with, not work friends, not necessarily church friends, but they could be people that you're doing a sport with or whatever. So the community, Jesus, of course, told us not just to love God, but also love your neighbor. And if you love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, on these two commands, the whole law turns. It's like the two hinges on a great door. And so it's perfectly legitimate. It's helpful when you study a Bible passage to say, okay, I'm thinking about what this means for my work, what it means for my church involvement, as well as my home involvement that we saw earlier, my home life and relationships, but also community. How does this passage impact the way that I relate to those around me? Okay, and then to complete the list, our words. The Bible has a lot to say about what comes out of our mouths, for out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, Jesus says in a quite strong passage in Matthew 12, when he's confronting and challenging the authorities in that section. But our words really reveal a lot. So what is the implication for the way that I speak? Am I speaking words of gentleness? Am I speaking words of kindness? Are my words reflecting a heart that reflects God's heart? And that, of course, applies in kind of all of these arenas, literally all of them, in some way or other. So yeah, from the values down to the words and everything in between, this list hopefully can be helpful to just think through. You've read your passage, you've understood what it meant back then, you've thought about its implications for your love and your heart response to God who's revealing himself through it. But then what does it mean to live it out? It's not enough to have happy thoughts. We want to be doers of the word. also. And so these are some arenas in which we maybe need to think through, what is this passage saying that is going to have an impact in my life? And then, of course, to pray and say, Lord, have that impact. Let it do its work in my life. We're not reading the Bible to leave God behind and to go and fix ourselves. No, we're reading the Bible for the impact He has in our life. And so it's very much in our fellowship with Him that there will be transformation in all these areas and more. So there you have it. 8 arenas to consider as you think about the application of God's Word.